fascism are coming out and saying, yeah, this is the thing. This is it. This is real. And in fact, it's gotten so bad that there were 2 or 3 different leading scholars on fascism who were like, I'm outie, dog. Like, I'm leaving this country. One of them went to Canada. We covered an interview on one of them the other day. But look at this. So now we have this from NPR. Hundreds of scholars say the U.S. is swiftly heading toward authoritarianism. A survey of more than 500 political scientists finds that the vast majority think the United States is moving swiftly from liberal democracy towards some form of authoritarianism. In the benchmark survey known as Bright Line Watch, U.S.-based professors rate the performance.
For the last few years, I've had this sense that everything I learned as a kid about how America's government works is completely wrong. But I had no idea how bad things actually were until I saw this one graph. Researchers at Princeton University looked at more than 20 years worth of data to answer a pretty simple question.
20 years of data, and this is over a 9-year-old video, so that's over 30 years, at least over 29 years, but it's been much longer than that.
Does the government represent the people? Now, this is what they found. This axis here represents public support for any given idea. On the left at 0% are ideas that not a single American wants.
Yes.
On the right at 100% are ideas that everyone supports.
Yeah.
This axis represents the likelihood of Congress passing a law that reflects any of these ideas, from a 0 to a 100% chance. On this graph, an ideal republic would look like this. If 50% of the public supports an idea, there's a 50% chance of it becoming law. If 80% of us support something, there's an 80% chance. You get the idea. Now, most Americans would probably agree that, with a few exceptions, we should be as close to this ideal as possible. Unfortunately, the way America actually works doesn't even come close. Take an idea that nobody supports, literally nobody, and it has about a 30% chance of becoming federal law. Now, take an incredibly popular idea, the most popular idea this country has ever seen, and there's also about a 30% chance of it becoming law. This means that the number of American voters for or against any idea has no impact on the likelihood that Congress will make it law. Put another way, and I'm just going to quote the Princeton study directly here, the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. So if you've ever felt like your opinion doesn't matter and that the government doesn't really care what you think, well, you're right.
This is through Democratic and Republican presidents alike.
There's a catch. This flat line only accounts for the bottom 90% of income earners in America. Economic elites, business interests, people who can afford lobbyists, they get their own line.
Ooh, and they always have.
Look at how much closer their line is to the ideal. When they want something, the government is much more likely to do it. And when they don't, they have the power to completely block it from happening, no matter how much the rest of the country
supports it. No soup for us.
They get what they want, and guess who ends up paying for it?
And Kyle knows about that study. So this is why we call him Dem Shady. You got to be shady to know as much as he knows and to support the Democrats. But we'll get back to Kyle, see what he got to say still.
Or some form of authoritarianism. In the benchmark survey known as Bright Line Watch, U.S.-based professors rate the performance of American democracy on a scale from 0, complete dictatorship, to 100, perfect democracy.
So the study just said we're at 30%. We got 30% of what we want, they get what they want, right? So 30% is what we've been at for over 30 years.
Election in November, scholars gave American democracy a rating of 67. Several weeks into Trump's second term, the figure plummeted to 55%. It just says several weeks. Now, I don't know. I still think that's before Gilmar Abrego Garcia and directly shipping people to El Salvador with no due process whatsoever.
It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no...
So basically he's saying that if you have a hard life and that you had no help when you were young and you became a criminal, that doesn't matter. All he cares about is his family. He doesn't care about society and society's ills. It doesn't matter why you got to where you are. If it's a bad place, you're just in a bad place, so he doesn't care.
Background that enabled them to become socialized as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or or not they had no background that enabled them to have become socialized into the fabric of society.
When they tell you who they are, listen.
Whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result. Let me set the record straight on this bill. The underlying bill, which is now the Biden-Hatch bill, was the Biden bill. A guy named Biden wrote that bill, and he wrote that bill by going down and sitting down with the President of the United States of America, not with his Attorney General, not with anyone else, with Bill Clinton.
And again, Dem Shady knows all about Joe Biden and what he said about Kamala Harris and her not caring about people, Hillary Clinton. The list of Democrats who care not about people goes on and on and on, and he knows all about it.
Or with no due process whatsoever.
No due process whatsoever. It does not matter how they got there. It does not matter. Joe Biden said that. There's the one where he was holding up he wasn't holding up the crack. He was holding up a quarter, saying if you had crack the size of a quarter, you would go to jail for 5 years. Then his son had 21 point some odd grams of crack on a scale with a hooker in the room, and he pardoned his son. Like, are you serious? That is textbook fascism.
Them having not even a criminal record.
Don't care about the people.
Maybe
care
it's time
about
to
his
ask
own
him again
family,
and see how low that number gets now.
Businesses.
That's a precipitous drop, said John Carey, a professor of government.
But it's a precipitous lie. A precipitous drop from 67 to 55, which is only a 12% drop. Neither one is very good, right? But we're at 30%. The study said we get 30% of what we want. What are they measuring that we're a social democracy or whatever democracy they say
government
we
at Dartmouth and co-director of Bright Line Watch. There's certainly consensus. We're moving in the wrong direction. Carey said the decline.
So we're moving in the wrong direction. I did the video just a couple days ago on the Jones plantation, where we came from a total fascist oligarchy beginning, where we were on plantations and had slaves, and then we moved through Jim Crow, and then we moved through the civil rights movement, and now all this wokeism and stuff, and it's getting too much. We're moving the correct way. We're moving away from the original fascism we started with, but we can't do it with the Democrats or the Republicans that we have. Like, they've been the fascist parties forever. We got to get rid of these capitalist parties. We got to go to the left or go to the very far right and go libertarianism. I'm a leftist myself. I want to do more socialistic things, but if we're going to do capitalist things, we're going to get fascism, because capitalism is fascism.
Between November and February was the biggest since Bright Line Watch began surveying scholars on threats to American democracy in 2017. In the survey, respondents consider 30 indicators of democratic performance, including whether the government interferes with the press, oh boy, punishes political opponents, and whether the
government interferes with the press. They've been doing that. Are you serious? Like, the left doesn't even get say in the United States. Like, no one even knows what the left really is. Like, we don't have no papers. We don't have no real channels. We got people like this guy here saying he's on the left when he's a liberal, pushing Democrats who wrote the crime bill, who said they don't even care why you are or how you are. You're just going to go to jail because he cares about his family.
Legislature and the judiciary.
So these are the guys.
Executive authority.
Dem Shady over here is going to push on you.
Not all political scientists view Trump with alarm, but many like Carey, who focus on democracy and authoritarianism, are deeply troubled by Trump's attempts to expand executive power over his first.
As a prosecutor in law enforcement, I have a huge stick. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy.
I thought that was crazy. I was like, how can you lock parents up?
If you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail. Yes, we achieved intended effect.
I opened the door and I see at least 7 or 8 cops that wanted to arrest me. As a matter of fact, they did.
And frankly, the prosecutors in my office who volunteered to do this? My homicide prosecutors.
What does this sound like?
My gang prosecutors.
Dang.
And they went over there and I said, when you go over there, look really mean.
She had me arrested and prosecuted because my handicapped daughter was sick in the hospital and had missed some days of school.
I learned that with the swipe of my pen, I could charge someone with the lowest level offense. That person could be arrested, they could lose time from work, and their family maybe lose their job. They'd have to come out of their own pocket to help hire a lawyer. They'd lose standing in their community.
Dang,
I lost my job and couldn't pay rent.
Oh, dang, she knew she lost her job.
And we got evicted.
Got evicted, lost her home.
Weeks later, I could dismiss the charges.
Dang.
But their life would forever be changed.
I became homeless.
That's pretty
We had to
gangsta.
move into a motel.
This is the Democrats,
All
y'all.
because
But
of the swipe of my pen.
Dem and
I
them
don't
knows
agree
this too.
what Kamala Harris did to my mom, and I don't agree with what she's done to other parents as well.
And so that was the president before, and then the one running for president right after. These are the two Dems who are the most current, not popular, but current and powerful Dems. He knows this. He knows this about them. I mean, and he's still gonna push vote blue no matter who. These are the blues.
To expand executive power over his first several months in office. Quote,
And executive power. He has the stroke of my pen. How much more power do you need? Like, I mean, is he expanding it beyond the stroke of his pen? He already has executive orders, right? He just can do the stuff with the stroke of his pen, too.
slid into some form of authoritarianism, says Stephen Levitsky, a professor of government.
Authoritarianism. The Kamala sounded pretty authoritarian. And I mean, I would think that the Palestinians would think that the Democrats are pretty authoritarian, or at least pretty mean.
Harvard and co-author of How Democracy Dies. It is
Democracy
relatively
dies
mild
30% of
compared to some others. It is certainly reversible, but we are no longer living in a liberal here's an expert saying straight up, quote, we are no longer living in a liberal democracy. Look, man.
Well, I guess a liberal democracy, but a liberal democracy is a right-wing democracy that is run by the corporations, where we get 30% of our stuff, or 30% of what we want. So, I mean, I guess if that's what they're comparing it to, what do we get, like 20% now of what we want? Maybe 15%? Or maybe, I doubt it's even down that far, right? Probably like 25%. But I mean, what's the difference? We're not getting what we want, and whatever the corporations want, they get, and what they don't want doesn't happen. And if it's like universal health care, but we all want universal health care, but the corporations don't, then that's no good. That's not a real. That's what a liberal democracy is, where we still do what the corporations want. We pretend to do.
It's important to point.
We do a little bit of what we want just to keep us happy. A little sprinkle.
Now, we were not. It's not like prior to Trump, everything was hunky-dory, everything was good, everything was acceptable, we were a perfect democracy. That's just not true.
We were committing a genocide, we had the stroke of your pen lady, we had the man who doesn't care as president. Why our society is the way it is. He doesn't care, he just cares about his family and hopes that you only care about your family. His words, not mine, I showed them to you.
Mid-1970s and onward, we have become basically an oligarchy, right?
So from the mid-1970s and onward, so what he's basically referring to is the New Deal. From the New Deal, but FDR passed the New Deal telling the capitalists that if you don't pass this, if you don't pay taxes for a little while, the socialists are going to take over. And they're going to take your money and they're going to spread it out, and the people are going to rule, and it's not going to be corporate rule no more. It's going to be people rule. And so the corporations didn't want that. So FDR got them to save capitalism by giving out little bits. And they only gave little bits to certain people. Black people really didn't get none of those bits. So it was like what did Hitler do? He only gave certain people stuff. They didn't necessarily kill us at that speed, but they took our towns. Anytime our towns got too good, they put them underwater or just burnt them down or just chased us out and took our homes. So it was a liberal democracy, which is a right-wing, corporate-led democracy for only a certain people, which is just another term for fascism. Like, capitalism is fascism. It is who the people who have money get more say. That's what it is.
A name oligarchy in practice, where big business and
and it goes a little something like this.
What you listening to, son?
If you hold a gun, and I hold a gun, we can talk about the law. If you hold a knife, and I hold a knife, we can talk about rules. If you come empty-handed, and I come empty-handed, we can talk about reason. But if you have a gun, and I only have a knife, then the truth lies in your hands. If you have a gun, and I have nothing, what you hold isn't just a weapon, it's my life. The concepts of law, rules, and morality only hold meaning when they are based on equality. The harsh truth of this world is that when money speaks, truth goes silent. And when power speaks, even money takes 3 steps back. Those who create the rules are often the first to break them. Rules are chains for the weak, tools for the strong. In this world, anything good.
What you listening?
And right now, he's about to admit that he knows this, and he's still going to try to sell you the Democrats.
Mid-1970s and onward, we have become basically an oligarchy, right? Democracy in name, oligarchy in practice, where big business and billionaires basically fund the political campaigns of politicians. They get in there and they represent those interests over the interests of the American people. That's always been the case. Now, having said that, it still also
Having
was
said
the
that,
case.
the Democrats are better.
We truly and sincerely had separation of powers. We had checks and balances.
When?
We have
For who?
due process. There were certain things.
So certain people had due process. My people used to get lynched and hung up until the 70s. And then since the 70s, people don't like the wokeness. They've been fighting back since we've got almost full rights or whatever. But like, are you serious? He knows all these things. America has never had due process for all people. America has never had due process for, like, it upsets me a lot, and you can probably hear my voice. But like, you don't care about everybody when you say that. Especially somebody like him, because he is politically smart, he's politically savvy, he understands stuff. He's read stuff, he knows about Fred Hampton, he knows about, I would say, Forsyth County, Georgia, he knows about at least Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He knows, I would think he knows about the Osage tribe. But there are a lot of people in America who didn't get due process. And the cops let a lot of people go. And the cops did a lot of the stuff. And even still to this day, that's why Black Lives Matter was a thing. Whether you like Black Lives Matter or not, there was no due process a lot of times. And he knows this. It's so aggravating to see his turn. Like, I watched this dude 12 years ago, at least 10 years ago, probably 12, maybe even 14 years ago. I probably watched the first show he ever made. I've been watching this guy forever. And to see him just go so hard, so blue no matter who. He was not like this. He wasn't a blue no matter who, just hard right liberal. It's like really sad to see somebody the Trump derangement syndrome in this man is amazing.
Basic liberal values, a belief more in freedom of speech. There were definitely examples where we didn't abide by that, whether it be Edward Snowden, for example, who I think is a hero, or Julian Assange, who I think is a hero. But broadly speaking, domestically in the United States, we were on the spectrum of, are we very pro-free speech or are we super locked down? We were leaning...
Again, it depends on whose free speech you're talking about. You're talking about far left-wing people. You had the whole Red Scare, Red Scare, what do you call it? Cold War, when people on the left, communist, socialists, weren't allowed to say anything. Like, that was not freedom of speech. You had the McCarthyism era. The right does not let us speak, and the Democrats let them take away our right to speak and our right to do anything, and the Democrats help them keep their power. The Democrats are on the right. It is the game. It's not even them keeping their power. The Democrats are keeping the power with them.
Way more in the free speech direction, right? So what Trump is doing is coming in like a wrecking ball and taking away these basic liberal Enlightenment values, these Magna Carta values that we all take for granted. That's gone.
That we don't all take for granted. That's the whole thing that the black people now, that people are saying, oh, black people aren't protesting with us, and where are the black people? And we're chilling in the back just saying, like, hey, man, we cool, man. Like, we're going to sit this one out because we've been doing this. Life is crazy if when you're black. It's nuts to be a black person. And I can see it from a black and a white point of view because I'm a light-skinned person and I can pass, and I don't try to pass or nothing like that. But I'm just saying, I've been in both areas and I can do both areas, and it's just crazy to just hear people talk about how, oh my gosh, it's so much worse right now. Like, all black people are just sitting there like, you guys are just acting silly. Like, you guys have no idea what it's like to have any real struggle then. Like, Trump is something different than Reagan or the Joe Biden clip I just showed you. I was in 94, I was 15 years old. So I'm like 13, 15, 16, 18 around this time, right? Well, way before 18, I'm like 13 around this time, right? 13, 15. Cops started harassing me when I was driving. I got harassed so much. I literally did not think I was gonna live to 30 years old. I thought a cop was gonna shoot me, and people used to laugh at me all the time when I would tell them that. I'm like, why are y'all laughing? You don't even understand. Cops would just like, they'd pull me over and they would harass me and they would instigate me. And I'm thinking, like, at first I'm like, dude, what's happening? Like, what's going on today? Like, you guys something's going on. I'm like a kid, right? I'm like 16, the first time I ever get pulled over. And then they kept doing it, and like, it took me a little while, but after a while I'm like, oh my gosh, you want me to do something. You're trying to instigate me to do something so you can shoot me. And I could just see it. And I just started acting like a straight up weenie. When they would pull me over, I'm like, my hands would be up on the wheel with my license out, my registration in my hands. And I'm like, oh, yes, sir. Hi, sir. How are you doing today, sir? And I would just talk like a total, just straight up nerd, whatever you want to call it, straight A student. And I would just proper. And I would do it to where they would try to be all mad at me and stuff, and they would say stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry about that, sir, and stuff. And they would see it in my eyes and hear it in what I was doing and know that I knew what they were doing. And they would just be like, oh, and they would just leave right there, be like, all right, go. And they would just leave. They'd get mad because they knew I knew what they would do. I know the thing, right? So I did my shucking and jiving, right? I'm like, I don't want to die today, sir. So, but I'm a kid at that point, right? Like I said, I found Hawaii when I was 24, and it took me to about 27, 28 years old to where I realized I wasn't going to die. I remember the moment that I was sitting in this place called Sharks Cove. I was sitting in this raft and stuff, just looking up at the sky with some of my friends and stuff, and I was like, I felt like somebody reached down and just pulled something off of me, right? I just felt this whole weight come off of me, and I was like, whoa, what was that? And I was like, oh man, I'm comfortable. And I was like, this is what it's like to feel. I've never felt comfortable before. I had never felt comfortable in my own country. This dude talking about fascism is coming now. Dude, tell that to black people. That's why we sitting out chilling, man, because y'all acting all stupid over Donald Trump. Shut up, Dem and them. You are shady. So shady. Angry.
So now it's an oligarchy, except it's injected with steroids and human growth hormone. You're seeing a robber baron coup.
Oh, so now they're including more than black people. Now it's a problem.
Elon Musk. It's that mixed with straight up fascist policies. No hearing.
Oh, no, wait. It's just including more than black people now. Oh my gosh. This dude.
No due process. We're going to kidnap you in the middle of the night and human traffic you to El Salvador.
They used to sell our kids and tell us who we could. They used to breed us in the beginning of this country up until, maybe 100, what was it, the 1860s, so what's that, 160 years ago. We used to get bred. And they didn't end all the way slavery for quite a while. In some places, they didn't tell the slaves, right? It took a while. Juneteenth and all that. But this guy knows this. It does not care. This guy knows about Jim Crow. Did we get due process during Jim Crow when we had separate water fountains? This man knows this stuff. This is supposed to be a politically smart guy who is teaching people things. And he's lying to you. This man is straight lying to you. These are lies. Oh, America's just turned fascist. If that's what you think, you don't care about black people. America's been fascist to us. It has been fascist to you too, but you just don't seem to mind that it wasn't that fascist to you. But now that they're going to bring you in a little more, okay.
That's what we're witnessing. So to say it has escalated is a massive understatement, right? A massive understatement.
They just turned DEI the other way. They're just bringing y'all in with us, doing the... It makes me, like, he makes me so mad now. Like, you don't care about anything that happened before in America's history.
It is getting orders of magnitude worse under Trump than what it was beforehand. All right, let me give you some more. When scholars use the term authoritarianism, they aren't talking about a system like China's, a one-party state with no meaningful elections. Instead, they're referring to something called competitive authoritarianism, the kind scholars say they see in countries such as Hungary and Turkey. In a competitive authoritarian system, a leader comes to power democratically and then erodes the system of checks and balances. Typically, the executive fills the civil service.
Let's see how our leaders come together democratically.
Day 4.
I have a big announcement, Mr. Smith says. The daily meeting began. Mr. Jones' cousin is here, and not just to visit and see how our project is coming along. It has been decided that from now on, you will be deciding who will manage the plantation.
Yes, we will.
Of course, this job can't be done by just anyone, but every 3 months we will have a special meeting at which all the workers will vote on whether we think Mr. Jones should run the plantation or whether we think his cousin, Mr. Johnson, should run the plantation. That means that ultimately you are...
Cal thinks Mr. Johnson. I think neither.
...in charge because you will be deciding which man you want running things on your behalf. If you don't like the way things are being managed, you now have the power to change it. Amazed and pleased, the workers headed out again to the fields to pick the cotton. Days passed, months passed, a year passed, and the plantation continued to operate as before. Sometimes Mr. Jones was in charge, sometimes Mr. Johnson was in charge, but the day-to-day routine stayed exact.
Dem Shady just wants Mr. Johnson to be in charge. He doesn't care. He doesn't want to change the plantation. He just wants Mr. Johnson to be in charge.
But but the day-to-day routine stayed exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
The workers worked hard, long hours every day and still had little to show for it.
Again, it's just very aggravating that somebody with as much political knowledge as Kyle has is lying to people and just trying to herd them into a right-wing Democratic Party, talking about he represents the left in any way, and he does not.
Typically, the executive fills the civil service and key appointments, including prosecutor's office and judiciary, with loyalists. He or she then attacks the media, universities, and non-governmental organizations to blunt public criticism and tilt the electoral playing field in the ruling party's favor.
Oh, no.
If that sounds familiar, it's because that is literally exactly what's happening right now.
That's literally exactly what America has been since it started. The ruling power. Only land-owning white men were allowed to vote. Women couldn't vote. Black people couldn't vote. People without land could not vote. So yes, this was a country set up for the rich white person, and even Hitler looked onto our forefathers, and he wanted to set up Germany like that. They inspired him. Like, this country, we just called it imperialism. Imperialism is the same exact thing as fascism. It's capitalist people taking over and kind of being racist about it too, right? Wiping out religions and people, and it didn't matter when it was the West doing it. I don't know why Hitler got so messed up, because he's part of the West too. He was just doing what the rest of the West does. So, I mean, I guess, I don't know, but like, I'm not saying that he should have done it, but the West does that, and that's what we do, and that's what we've done. It's crazy that they act like this is new.
The government would still have elections and would nominally be Democratic, says Rory Truex.
Nominally be Democratic to vote out of George Bush or his brother or Obama. Like, these people are so
scientist
silly.
of Princeton who focuses
I
on
can't
China.
even believe it's
But
considered
those elections
serious
would no
anymore.
longer be free and fair. Well,
no longer be free and fair like it was before, when we could choose out of this rich guy or that rich guy.
already at that point in many respects. Go watch the interview Crystal and I did with investigative journalist Greg Palast.
Okay, so he was talking about our representative democracy and how it's changed and how it's so different now. Okay, election cycle 2020 banner was a banner year for political spending. In fact, it was record-breaking with an overall total of $14.4 billion spent on federal campaigns across the country. So, but it's been like this forever. You got to spend a lot of money. Let's see. I'll leave this link to US House of Representatives. In the 2020 election cycle, the average successful campaign for the US House of Representatives spent over $2 million. However, competitive districts often see spending that far exceeds this average. For instance, 2020 Georgia's South 2020 campaign for Georgia's 7th congressional district saw total expenditure surpassing $14 million from both major party candidates. Okay, that's a lot of money. You could do a lot of stuff with that. But, okay, and then U.S. Senate. The stakes for Senate are even higher, where campaigns can run into the tens of millions. The average successful Senate campaign expenditure in 2020 was nearly $20 million. High-profile races, such as the 2020 South Carolina Senate race, saw combined spending from the candidates exceed $130 million, making it one of the most expensive Senate races in history. Now, again, high profile, that's exclusionary, right? Like, to have this much money means that only certain people can run for office. This is not a true democracy. What the Green Party is trying to do, I'm trying to help get the Green Party, and they've been doing this before me. We want regular people to run for office. We want plumbers, electricians. I'm a personal trainer, like people who work at hospitals, teachers, people who know regular things and know what the cost of food is, people who do regular stuff and all that and know what regular people want. Now, do we need some experts and politicians or whatnot? Maybe not. I don't know. But we could probably use a whole lot less. We could maybe use a few and then use a whole lot of regular people like me and you listening to this podcast or whatever this is called, running for office and winning office. And because like Donald Trump, He doesn't understand anything that a regular person knows. This dude was born so rich that he could file for bankruptcy 6 times with businesses and still be a billionaire. Who do you know can file bankruptcy 6 times and do anything? Nobody, probably, unless you know Donald Trump. But like, it's crazy to think that these people know better than us. They just have the connections and have just been so rich for so long that they just think that they're better than us, and I guess we let them do that. I don't think they're better than us, and I don't vote for these people. I think you guys should probably stop yourselves. And we're gonna go out with this. I don't know if you've seen this, and I can't even prove that this is true, but it's on the news, so I don't know. Maybe. I didn't do the study. I didn't do the research. This little girl did. So I'm going to pass this on to you guys. Look it up more if you want to. But to show how exclusive of a club our leadership is.
It's a great thing for history.
George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, William Howard Taft, and President Barack Obama. One young girl traced them all back to one common ancestor.
They're all cousins and all grandsons of John Lackland.
It's the first family tree of its kind. Pouring through more than 500,000 names for months, 12-year-old Bridge Ann d'Avignon discovered that all the U.S. presidents, except Martin Van Buren, are related to the former King of England, John Lackland Plantagenet, signer of the Magna Carta in 1215.
Mildred Reed is his first great-grandmother on George Washington. And on Obama, Mildred Reed is the 10th great-grandmother.
It started as an assignment to research her own lineage, tracing it back to roots in France. But Bridge Ann wanted to branch out.
Well, I think we just all go back somewhere. It's just a matter of proving it.
She started with George Washington. But unlike other professional genealogists that only looked at the male family lines, Bridge Ann was able to link the presidents together using both male and female ancestry. Before this, historians had only been able to link 22 family trees.
She kind of created a triumph of women's studies here.
Bridge Ann also figured out she's an 18th cousin of President Obama, something she hopes to be able to share with him in person.
I've written a letter to Obama, but I just gotten standard reply. I hope to meet the president and explain it to him.
In Paso Robles, Adam Rakusin, you're...
See, and you'll find out crazy stuff like this in this video if you listen to Across the Spectrum, which you guys do. So thank you. Like, share, subscribe, and yeah, I said share. Leave a comment.